Action! Hey everyone, it's DrRic. Abe had a question about exercise and how much is good, how to get it, what's the goal, short-term, long-term. And we're going to get into that because it's a dilemma that a lot of people will always hit, whether they're just beginners or elitists. So if this is the first time you're finding me, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below and the alert button to find out when I put new videos out. So with regards to exercise prescription, exercise can be prescribed. I think it was starting to hit its heyday back in the late 90s because of the popularity of the residency or the training, physical medicine and rehabilitation. These folks weren't orthopedic surgeons and they weren't neurologists, but they dealt with movement, kinesiology, dynamics and pathology of musculoskeletal system. And they're really good. They're also good with injections in case you have a trigger point or you're hitting a stick point if you have a medical problem and you're trying to advance. So the bottom line for me is I use natural things to improve this factory that we have to hopefully beat the disease that we've accumulated. Now, I saw a couple of 20-year-olds today, and most of my 20-year-olds don't have any problems. Well, maybe weight. So the only thing that a 20-year-old will be coming in for is a checkup because either mom or spouse said they're snoring or they're curious about their eating habits or gassiness. But then I have to look at them as a coach to figure out, okay, if I was the lifeguard here and I was to say who is swimming in the deep water that doesn't know how to swim, I'd kind of be observing the whole ocean and noticing the swimming style, all that stuff. So that analogy being said, if a young guy comes in and his body mass index is high or his blood pressure is high, it's an obvious thing. Those are the first things we work on. But then I have to peer into their lifestyle by asking them Q&A. And I was able to extract a bunch of things from my young guys to develop what I would take care of as far as deficiency, what I would take care as far as true injury or medical conditions, and then personal goals, personal loves, what they've tried before, what's worked for them when they were younger, what they have a goal for when they're older. Here's a list of different things that we use or that I've been privy to. I've tried actually all of these things, but those are a plethora of different things that you might be able to take advantage of. Not only Abe, but everybody else. So there's high intensity interval training, there's Tabata exercise, there's peripheral heart action, CrossFit, that's a big one now because there's a lot of gyms opening up because it's novelty. When it's novelty, people are engaged. When people are engaged, they'll be committed longer and there'll be more people there. So there's nothing like when you're tired and you don't want to exercise. One of the hardest things to do is to exercise like the end of the day. After a tough workout, after a tough 10 hours of work, the last thing you want to do is expend energy. But if you, like me, are like a zombie and you go there thinking, I know I'll get benefit, just let me go. And so it's tough to motivate myself. So what I do, I usually say, okay, if I go, I'm just going to go low intensity. So instead of doing a dynamic exercise HIIT training program, I just say, I'll put the backpack on and I'll do the stair climber for 10 minutes. I mean, it's better than nothing. Or I'll do breath exercise, or I'll just do legs, something that'll be a compromise. Kind of like the concept of Monday. Monday, nobody likes Monday. It's the same work day as any other day. There might be a little more busyness to the Monday morning, but for some reason, I have highest stress on Monday. So what do? I have the best teas. I usually go for my Gyokuru tea. That's the high-end tea. Kind of expensive, but I save it for Mondays. I also try to come in, maybe take a break from exercise and or do an easy exercise on Monday morning. I also try to say, if I'm going to be dieting over the weekend, I'll let it go for Monday just because it's stressful. I'll also give myself other breaks during Monday because it offsets the possibility of failure. So if you're tired and you have to do a massive exercise routine, we account for that, or at least the exercise prescriber is supposed to account for stressors, challenges, deficiencies, and then compensate or make a plan around those deficiencies while also embracing strength. if you can see the end point, the goal, and it's coming closer, and sometimes it's easier to tolerate your investing of exercise and time and effort and sweat. Sometimes if you don't see an end point to this, who wants to invest anything when it's just a matter of, I got leg cramps again, I'm all sweaty, got to change out, got to do more laundry, I got to spend to go to this gym, I got to spend to have this personal trainer, I got to go to the doctor that's not covered by insurance. So if there's a short-term goal, if there's a long-term goal, and if there's a maintenance phase, then to me it makes it easy. So I usually will break it down into those that kind of framework first. Short-term goals, I like the way Weight Watchers kind of entices their newbies to come in. Easy goal, 10% weight loss of what you enter with. For me, as far as exercise, if we're starting from scratch, with my sports medicine background, it's easy. I would just say we work on what the medical problem is. If it's high blood pressure, bad knees, low back pain, you take care of those things first. So sometimes if insurance is cheap, I can actually write a prescription for a physical therapist to be seen. Physical therapists will be seen for those specific weak points or those physical medical conditions. And usually at the tail end of my prescription to the physical therapist, I'll dovetail, and can you, before graduation, please take the patient up to the machines and show them how to use the machines properly. Now, whether that physical therapist has been educated in athletic training or not, might or might not, but physical therapists know what they're talking about. So usually if they have the time and it's within the legal limits of what insurance pays for, it'll be done. If the physical therapist doesn't have the time, or they're uncomfortable with advancing to a home exercise program or how to use the machines at the gym, then I'll say come back and we'll find a personal trainer or an exercise physiologist to design the fancier stuff after being discharged from the medical problems. So you take care of medical problems first. This is the way I prescribe exercise. Take care of the medical deficiencies and problems first. Make sure that's under control. And that takes a little bit of time. If I have a guy with a poor abdominal core, or more importantly, if I have a new mom that has very weak pelvic floor, to do an exercise program, let me back up a little bit. To send to physical therapy, because it is covered, will be one thing. But to just do the exercises in physical therapy and not to expect to do them on your own, no way. It takes, for muscle to respond when you're 20, it takes about 2 months, 3 months to see size gain. Just like when we see somebody in some sport, say soccer, football, baseball, basketball, the coaches will always want their students, athletes, to be in preseason conditioning, because in the 3 to 4 months of the sport, it's rapidly, your skills, your coordination, team practice is rapidly accelerated until nationals or states and then nationals. So usually that's about 3 to 4 months. So an average, we're built on that. Average student athlete can hone in skills by 3 to 4 months. And usually in 4 years, they're maximized. So if you're in your middle ages of 30 to 50, and you're expecting the muscle to respond in 12 visits to a physical therapist, come on. So what we do with physical therapy is, again, if it's tolerable and it's affordable, physical therapist will initiate. You have to listen to all this stuff, and then you're on your own. And hopefully, again, they'll design something you could do on your own in the gym. If you don't see any responsiveness, if my patients don't see any responsiveness in about 2 to 3 months, then there might be a second problem that we have to address. So first it's the injury and or medical problems, then it's deficient areas. So in bodybuilding, we always look at bodybuilders to be symmetrical. Upper body must be just as muscular as lower body. Definition should be all over. The amount of muscles defined and versus muscle size is important to have a good symmetry. So deficient areas might be holding my patient back. So if they are, then we try to use a personal trainer or exercise physiologist, a yoga instructor, a teacher, a coach to hit those deficient problems. So for example, if we have a very difficult, I used to have with the University of Central Florida, we had a running back. He was awesome, but he was cut and ripped. He was very muscular. He always used to wear half shirts to show off his 6-pack or 8-pack. And yet, he would always spasm in his musculature. He refused to do flexibility exercises. He refused to do stretching because he was that good. He would just roll out a 3.6 second 40-yard dash. So I believe that his magnesium was off. I believe it was because he wouldn't do the flexibility exercises, but that was a deficiency for him. His deficiency was he didn't have any flexibility. He had all power, no flexibility. So if you ask muscle that's not flexible to do maximum 110% effort, if it's going to cramp up, it will cramp up. So that's his deficiency. In a person that had an ACL reconstruction, usually what happens is the knee and the hamstring are super tight because the ACL is super tight compared to the other side. So the gait's off. If you have if you have them lying down on the ground and you look at their heels as they kind of drape over, not on the ground, on the table, and you face down, the legs for the ACL will be high, the heel will be high, and the other leg will be low. So that has to be worked on, and it's painful. If you've ever talked to anybody with an ACL repair, to just do something called a heel hangs is painful. You're supposed to put a weight over the heel, let the whole heel hang, and have it pull on the ACL that was put in. So very painful, but with enough motivation and coaching, that person will have equal. So there's many different things. A baseball player, a pitcher that's been tightened up with his throwing arm, he has to work on flexibility of the tightened shoulder capsule, or they have to work on strengthening of the rhomboids in the back because they might be sloppy on one side, super strong on the other side. So there are deficiencies that occur that have to be addressed, and maybe that will get my patient to tolerate exercise and see maximized muscle responsiveness. Usually when muscle responds, you'll see growth. That's the obvious thing. But when muscle and cardiac muscle in particular respond, you'll see lower heart rate. You'll see more fitness, tolerability. I went outside when I was going to function yesterday. A guy broke down. He was trying to push his car. He was probably 60. He was probably 50, but he looked 60. And he was pushing the car on his own. So I got out of the car. 2 other guys got out of the car, and we pushed the car about, and this is out of the spur of the moment, and we pushed the car about half a block. And I was able to keep on pushing. All of us were able to keep on pushing. I think the other 2 guys were gassed, and I was okay. Then we let him go, and he drifted off, and I had to sprint back to my car. I noticed right after that, and my car was about to go. I think people were beeping at us. But when I got in the car, my wife was saying, "Which way should I go?" Because I was the one that was driving. She was taking over. And I had to tell her, "Hold on a second," because I had to catch my breath. And at that point in time, I thought, wow, that was one of the toughest pushes I ever had. And it took me a while, but after about 10 minutes, my breath was back to normal, and I thought, ooh, this was a good pump. So I am only able to attain that because of the training, the interval training I do now. I usually don't push cars, but it's kind of cool because I was able to get out at the age of 55, I'm going on 56 this month, I was able to get out of my car, push a 3,000-pound vehicle with 2 other guys down about half a block, sprint back to my car, which was about 6 long vehicles. That's 6 times 30 feet each or around. So whatever that comes out to, and I was okay with it. So I don't do training. I don't do training pushing cars like that. I hardly do cardio. I kind of do high intensity training with weights. But it's kind of cool when you can just jump in and do something like you were 20 years old. If you've ever watched a grade school kid, high school kid, or college kid, they'll just be able to have a pickup game and take off and sprint. I think all humans should be able to sprint. Fight or flight, run from danger. You should be able to sprint, should be able to jump, should be able to twist and twirl, should be able to do squats and get on the floor and clean the floor. Should be able to do all that stuff and not be apprehensive you're going to break something. I think when you turn mid-60s to 70s, you had to cool down a little bit with that because of the possibilities of fracture. But anyway, I'm sorry, I digressed. But the most important thing, I think, to get out of it is a level of fitness. And you will notice that if you push the envelope with what your muscle can do, what your heart can do, what you will tolerate as far as perceived exertion. Perceived exertion is your shortness of breath, your winded feeling, the palpitations in your heart, because your heart will be tacking away. Yesterday I was probably tacking away at about 160 to 170. And if I wasn't fit, and if I didn't hit that fast heart rate on a routine basis, 3 days to 4 days a week, I'd probably think I'm having a heart attack. because that sensation is, I think of it as kind of cool, but people who don't exercise think of it as this is threatening. So, and that's where your level, your confidence, your level at rest will be much more ready for challenge, and actually more at ease too. So that's the other benefit. When you exercise, just like when you meditate, the body will sit at a lower level and it'll be able to tolerate more stress. Be able to get up and go if it has to, otherwise just be able to float there and be able to deal with daily stressors that we usually get exposed to. It's when you're not ready for those things and you have exposure to stress that the stress response comes on, and that's usually inflammation. When you're able to tolerate, I think of a monk or a yoga teacher. They're usually pretty cool, mellow, and a Tai Chi master, they're mellow. Even if there's a threatening condition, they're thinking outside the box, and if a threat comes their way, they're pushing out of the way and they're reacting without reacting with a stress response, which is really cool. And the heart can do that too. And so can the white blood cells. If the white blood cells can do it, you can fight cancer, you can heal up fast, you can feel. This is the true fountain of youth. Feel like you did when you were 20. And then we go to personal goals and personal loves. You know, I had somebody that loves Indian food because they were born in India, or loves Mexican food because that's what mom cooks. I don't really pull them all away from that. I think there's things you can change in the short run. Quinoa instead of tortilla. Indian food, decrease on the basmati rice, or add more vegetarian protein to the rice to neutralize the glycemic index. There's things you can do to change things around. You don't have to just go vegetarian. You don't have to just stop meat. So that's why personal loves, if I tell some of my Indian patients, I don't want you to eat rice anymore, I don't want you to eat roti anymore, they'll leave. And that's why it's a compromise. So we have to find out what your loves are, find out what your goals are, set goals, articulate changes, stick to the changes, and then most important, reassessment. Because if we hit a short-term goal and we fail, it's okay. We just have to redo that short-term goal until we're successful. When we're successful with the short-term goal, I usually go for a long-term goal. So I think of it when I take my clients, patients, and relatives on hikes with me. I don't take them straight to the summit. I always ask them to train beforehand, and we have short goals. We can stop every couple of miles for a water break. We can stop at the summit if we make it to the summit for really enjoying and picture taking and just basking in the feeling and understanding the feeling about how we did hit our goal, our summit. But sometimes the short-term goals have to lead to long-term goals. Once you hit the long-term goal, fantastic. Then I say it's time to reassess. I put here maintenance phase, but in many cases, if you hit your long-term goal and it's October, I wouldn't have another attack during winter months because it's just hard. Sometimes I give a break, maintain where you're at, enjoy the season, the holiday, and then hit it again on the other side of the holiday. So right now it's August. I'm telling everybody to speed up their goals so that by Halloween they've hit down even below their formulated goal, so that maybe in October, November, and December, and January you can indulge and not feel guilty. So that's why I think it's important to get feedback. To see your doctor and have all that stuff done. Nowadays, we only have 15 minutes to see patients. It's hard to articulate changes like this. That's why I think you have to, if you can't find a doctor that does an exercise prescription, then you have to at least see your doctor, get clearance, and define what's an injury, what's deficient. And then you have to have a coach, a life coach, exercise physiologist, a registered dietitian that might or might not have a little bit of exercise in them as far as knowledge, or a physical therapist with good nutrition practices. So as long as you have a well-rounded coach, you'll be able to use that person as a point, and then they can kind of get the other associated coaches or assistant coaches involved. I take pride in knowing what to do with regards to exercise. I also take pride in knowing what to do with regards to nutrition. I definitely know about deficiency and disease. So I think there's different ways that I can serve my patients, like you, Abe, to design something that'll get you successful. Ultimately, an exercise prescription is supposed to get you to 103, independent, just like what Dan Buettner found in his Blue Zones. 5 places in the world where people got to the age of 100 and they were still independent, and or they were still involved with their great grandkids, or they're still putting up fences. It's unbelievable about how you can really not be a prisoner to the aging process. So hopefully this does give you a little bit of an idea. And the last thing to also consider is, and this is where the doctor part comes in, first aid. So when we push the envelope with either starting these exercise types, even in the case of hiking, walking, or qigong or tai chi, yoga, there can be injuries with that. So definitely with contact sports, martial arts, mixed martial arts, boxing, the higher you go with the contact sport, the more the possibility of injury. It's important to know, again, take care of the deficiencies, but it's also important to know what to do in case of a first aid kit has to be pulled out. If you have an injury, we must squash, put the brakes on everything, take care of the injury, reassess, develop from there. That sometimes means you have to go back to a short-term goal, and because a new injury is defined, you have to reset our plans and first take care of the injury that might or might not be part of the deficiency, and then move back into planning. So good question, Abe. Hopefully the rest of you might be able to put some remarks on how you guys were successful with whoever you used and the level of the training of the person you used. But and put some comments down below if you don't mind. Otherwise, I really appreciate you watching, so stay tuned, and again, subscribe down below, and we'll see you in the next clinic.